There we go. It's doing the red thing. Thank you.
Just a couple of things.
Your site is the site secure. Click on it.
Yeah, it's hard to see the content. You have to inspect.
We're still
retweeting the fact that
yeah,
What? Oh, everything's going around.
other stuff here. Like if I go here and inspect.
Go to Facebook. Go to Facebook and see my site.
Is it?
All right, I think we can get started. Thank you everyone for coming. I know you had a lot of really awesome sessions to pick from, so I really appreciate you joining me this morning. My talk's called One Step at a Time, Lessons Learned from Drupal Newbie to Core Committer. If that's not the session you were looking for, I don't mind you doing a mad rush for the door, no offense taken. I've got the slides at bit.ly/onestepflorida, all one word, all lowercase. And I'll probably update the session on the camp website to also link to that after I'm done here. So if you don't want to worry about that, leave that up for a few more seconds. All right, think we're good? So my name is...
Thank you.
I think we might...
You can shut the door.
Yeah, I think we're going to shut that door. It's going to be a bit noisy. So my name is Scott Reeves, but if you may have heard of me as Cottser, C-O-T-T-S-E-R. You can ask me at the Genius Bar maybe how I got that name if you're curious. People sometimes ask these things. We'll go into that now. So what I'm going to be talking about is my journey of the past 5-ish years and kind of some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. What I'm going to talk about is meant to apply to more than just Drupal. So I'm not really going to be talking about a lot of technical things. I'm going to use some terminology like Twig and things like that, but you've likely heard of Twig by now. So, oh shoot, what just happened? I've got the screensaver completely off. Oh no, that's intentional. Sorry. Yes, thank you. This is totally intentional.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's just so you can, just so that you can hear my spiel.
Okay. Sorry to freak.
Sorry, yeah, I just thought we had a malfunction. Anyway, so if you've got a side project you want to start, side hustle, new hobby, whatever, maybe you can apply some of these lessons, or if you want to make a change in your career, whatever. I don't know your life, but this is not necessarily how to become a core committer, although we can use more people on the core committer team, so that's an option too. There's going to be sort of, I guess you can call them takeaways. They're going to be in this kind of green italic up here, and I'll read them out and everything. So the first one here is, I called it Nobody Knows Everything. So this is kind of a two-parter, but together we know a lot. I definitely don't have all the answers to everything, and I don't think anyone in this room does. But together we have quite a lot of knowledge, and we can do a lot of amazing things. I think the Drupal community is proof of that. And I gave Kathy Thays, also known as YesCT, who is around somewhere, credit for this kind of takeaway. I think this is a lesson that I learned through Kathy, and I learned a lot through Kathy, and we kind of learn from each other. It's good. So this is kind of a lesson that I learned from the Drupal core mentoring program. So let me kind of go back, and I'll kind of tell you a little bit about how I got here. I'm not going to tell you my whole life story, but I'll tell you kind of how I got into Drupal, and then later on I'll talk about the Drupal core mentoring program, so you'll kind of see where this gets in. So we'll rewind all the way back to the year 2000. So in Y2K, I put my first site online. I was, I guess, about 15 years old. It was a Quake 1 fan site. It's a video game. And I must have picked a really good free host because it's still online. I don't think I'll give you the URL. Maybe, not at the Genius Bar, maybe at the after party. Maybe. It's pretty embarrassing. I don't think I even have access to take it down. That's the sad part. So this message, my first site that I put online has this message on it. So I'm just going to read this out, and then I'll talk a little bit about what this means. So it says, looks best with a cascading style sheet capable browser, which is either, at this time, either Internet Explorer 3.0 plus or Navigator, Netscape Navigator Communicator 4.0 plus.
Wow.
So just take a minute, take a breath. Okay. So, Internet Explorer 3, there were browsers that couldn't even do CSS, like CSS1, and and we didn't even know at this time that there would be an IE6 to shed so many tears about, so many hours of crying and pain. So the web has obviously changed a lot in these 17 years. We're working on 17. And the nature of the web, and it's always changing, is what I love about this industry. Well, more specifically, the web industry, because you can always learn. There's always new stuff happening. It never really gets stale. I always like to mention this because not every path is direct. So I was doing websites when I was like in high school. And then I went to college for graphic design, actually, so we did like a tiny little bit of web development in there, but it was just to say like, and they taught us Flash, which, yeah, ask me if I'm using my Flash skills. So let's kind of fast forward. So in the roughly 2 years before I started using Drupal, like kind of between college and Drupal, really, I was doing freelancing, building web applications using the Cake PHP framework. I contributed that's an open source framework. I contributed some typo fixes and all these documentation updates. And they kind of had a wiki system where you would edit the documentation and then someone would go and kind of give that the sign off and approve it. And I guess I did enough of these while I was working on my projects. I found little things that could be improved in the docs. And at some point, I was in the top top 5 documentation editors or whatever, so that was cool. Felt good. And I worked on a local open data project that was built on Cake PHP, which it was mostly run by another web shop in my town. And by the way, I won't do a whole sales pitch, but I work for Digital Kidna, this company here. We've got the big red booth over there, out there somewhere, and we're from London, Canada, so we came all the way down here to Florida, so it's my first time at DrupalCamp Florida. Anyway, that's it. I kind of forgot to mention that at the start, so we'll just sneak that in, and then we'll move on. So in this project that I did, it's called London Trash. London's the city, and basically we've got an 8-day garbage schedule, which, as you can imagine, is a pain because the garbage day changes each and every week. So we built this website where you can, check online, and then you can also sign up for like email and like SMS notifications and stuff to be like, hey, take out the garbage. It's garbage day next day. At this point, to be honest, I'm not sure if it's still running. I kind of stepped back from maintaining that for obvious reasons. I got other things to do. But it was weird because that project, it was kind of another company in town mostly running it, and I kind of just swooped in and I was like, hey everyone, like I don't know any of you, and they were talking about, okay, which framework should we use? And I just kind of said like, hey, I've been using this one for my projects, and somehow they thought it was a good idea, and that's what we did. And so I kind of ended up mentoring a group of maybe about 15-20 people on like, here's how to use the framework, kind of teaching them different things. And there's certain things that you can only learn retrospectively, and that's one of them. Is that if I kind of look at a bird's eye view of what I was doing at this little hackathon on a weekend, it was pretty similar to what we do with Drupal mentoring. You're kind of just going around answering questions, helping people out. So I guess somehow I figured out. I didn't really figure out, but anyway, I guess I have a knack for that. So if we kind of go forward a couple years, that's when I started using Drupal. I started using Drupal 7 in its very early days, like 7.0. The first site that I built with Drupal that actually went live was a tiny little one-page site just for a little local organization. Not online anymore. I don't even have screenshots. Not important. the early experiences are not always great. This is a day of frustration for me in April 2011. So I said Drupal and me, specifically the web form module, are definitely not friends today. So, but I also didn't really know what I was doing. This is maybe 3 months or something into using Drupal. So if I look back, what I was really complaining about was the form API, not web form. So there you go. But I didn't really know that at the time. I was just like, what are all these arrays? What am I doing? So, and one thing that I remember from my early experiences is the theming experience was definitely frustrating. PHP templates, theme functions, this was all kind of weird to me. I was coming from more the framework aspect where you build what you need from the ground up, so you're kind of making all your own templates and all your own markup. So even just the idea of having to override everything was odd to me. So that kind of took some figuring out, and the PHP templates, anyway, we'll get to that later. I started doing some patches for like contrib modules. Most of them actually, maybe I was scratching my own itch, they actually revolved around web form, that module that I was complaining about. And so the web form module itself, I had to kind of go back and research what I did at that time to make this presentation, but the web form module basically mostly got typo reports. I was like, hey Nate, there's this typo, and he's like, great, fix, thanks. Very nice guy. Quick sketch. And there's also, we were doing some Drupal 6 at the time as well at Echidna, so there was a Drupal 6 module called web form reports that we were using, and I submitted a whole flurry of patches. Some of them are still sitting there in the queue, so yeah, but it's Drupal 6, so who cares? We're over it. Yeah, so then core mentoring kind of came in early 2012. Somehow I heard about it. I don't remember how. Maybe I was just clicking around Drupal.org or someone told me about it. Honestly, don't remember. It was called Core Office Hours at that time. So core mentoring is something that happens on IRC each week. I don't know how many people are familiar with IRC. It's like it's a kind of an old chat protocol. It's pretty old school by this point, but it's still used a lot, especially in open source. So you basically get a client to connect to the server, and the Drupal channels are all on the network called Freenode, which is kind of where the open source things live in IRC. It's a set of servers. So you've got rooms in there. So you've got like Drupal, you've got like Drupal contribute, Drupal support. There's a whole flurry of, and you can regional. I'd imagine there's probably like a Drupal Florida or something, Drupal FL, who knows. You can do like kind of private messaging as well. Anyway, so that's where this happens. So you basically, what you do is you would show up, you would log into this chat system at a certain scheduled time. That's why it was called office hours originally. And I would go every Monday, either 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. There's 2 time slots at this time. So there's Monday, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., kind of the night shift. Or depending on daylight saving times, it would actually be midnight to 2 a.m., which is even more of the night shift. And that's what I did. The other one was during working hours, so I couldn't really manage that with my day job, even though, anyway, we'll get to that. So I did this fairly consistently for a few months. I would show up on Monday nights and show up Tuesday a little bit more tired. Sometimes I would try and sneak in a little shut-eye. So in February 2012, 5 years ago, hard to believe, I was just tweeting time for a nap before Drupal core office hours. And so I kind of went through this for a few months, learned a lot, and was really loving it. And eventually I asked my employer, hey, can I attend the time slot that's like around lunchtime Wednesdays, and like, will you kind of sponsor me for a couple hours a week? It's 2 hours a week, no big deal. They said yes, luckily. And so I kept on going during working hours. This is where I want to take a second and give a shout out to my mentor, XJM, who is now a fellow core committer, and so it's awesome. She helped me a lot to just learn a lot, very patient with me, so I try and kind of pass that on when I'm mentoring people in the Drupal community or even at my day job. So thanks, Jess. So find support find a mentor maybe, find someone who's trying to do the same thing that you're doing. I think it can really be a big help, because then that way you don't feel like you're in it alone. So whatever you're doing, try and find support. Maybe that's through even like an online community or something, because you might not necessarily be able to find stuff locally, but I'll talk more about that later too. So one of the first core patches, moving from kind of contrib to core, using kind of through this core mentoring program, it was literally just changing capitalization. I think maybe what I was going for is a level actually simpler and lower than typo fixes, and so I think I kind of nailed that. So not even changing letters or white space, just capitalization. So yeah, going very, very minimal on that. But through this issue, it was basically about the core modules, like let's say Update Manager. There was no standard, so sometimes you would have Update Manager, like lowercase m for manager, and then you would have another one. Can't think of another 2-word module, but anyway, you would have some of them that have kind of sentence case or title case, and so we had a discussion about it, and I think we decided on title case, although I can't actually remember. And so I was kind of participated a little bit in this discussion. Then once it was decided, I was putting up the patches and everything. And through this, I learned how the community works and about the process of getting things into core. And I didn't have to write any code. So you can still work on patches for documentation sometimes, and you can still learn how things work and learn how the issue queues work and kind of meet people. In this instance, I think one of the main people that was involved in this issue was Jennifer Hodgson, who's been a really key person in Drupal documentation. So, start small. Whatever your version of fixing typos is, maybe consider starting there for whatever it is that you might want to pursue. It doesn't stop you from having bigger goals, but being able to achieve something right away is really satisfying in my opinion, and you can always progress from there. So for myself, I kept on going to the core mentoring hours and working on smaller issues in the core queue, just kind of trying to find these little small bite-sized pieces and slowly building on that. So around this time, when I was still kind of building up my skills, XJM messaged me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a core mentor?" And I was like, "What? I just learned how to do, I'm just learning still, and you want me to be a core mentor?" But it's usually how it goes. You kind of figure out one thing, and then it's like, okay, now switch it up and go to the next thing. So I said, sure. So I dove right in, and I was mentoring people on IRC in that same time slot during the day. So again, my employer was still sponsoring this. So I went there nearly every week, except for vacations or whatever, for about 2 years. So I put in, I don't know, I haven't done the math on that, but a good amount of hours. So I feel good about that. I feel like I passed on what Jess taught me, or I kind of, paid that back, paid it forward, if you will. And I definitely learned a lot too from the people that I mentored. It's a kind of a cliche for a reason that when you teach, you also learn. So core mentoring was a really great experience for me, and I also mentored at sprints, at camps like this, and DrupalCons and all that kind of things. So here's actually another kind of little mini lesson from Kathy, the SCT, who's at this camp. It's the 10-second rule. So this is for when you're kind of mentoring or helping someone at their computer, and it's kind of the, teach them how to fish rather than handing them a fish is sort of part of it. So if you're trying to tell someone to, they've got their terminal up and you want them to go into their Drupal site so they can, let's say, run a drush command or do something like that, instead of saying like cd space whatever sites folder wherever they're putting it, you can just tell them something more abstract. You can say, okay, open up your terminal, open up your command line, whatever you want to call it, and then go to your Drupal folder and give them 10 seconds. Just kind of, you can count in your head, and they might just do it, and that's great. They might kind of sit there and maybe start looking at you. They can always ask you too, but if you wait 10 seconds, that gives them the chance to do it on their own. And because I find a lot of the time when you're working at someone on the computer, especially if you're kind of the experienced guru, they can feel this pressure where they're like, oh, I'm not doing it fast enough, or I'm not I'm not doing it the right way. But there's so many different ways to use a computer, like with a lot of things in life. So give them a chance to do it their way, and if not, then you can tell them, hey, type in CD space tilde whatever. So thanks, Kathy, for that one. I use that at my day job all the time too, because I'm regularly going around and kind of helping people with if they're stuck or whatever. So this is gold, I think. So just trying to pass that on. So my first actual in-person sprint was in the summer of 2012 in Madison, Wisconsin. And so this was not only my first in-person sprint, but my first sprint as a mentor. So I've never actually, I kind of feel sad, but I've never actually experienced a sprint as like a sprint participant, only as a mentor or kind of a maybe sort of important looking person in the corner working with all the other people who are like pushing code into core. But please don't be intimidated. We're just people. So needless to say, I learned a lot that day. It was kind of a trial by fire. Yeah, sure.
We're kind of new to some of this. Like I know.
Like terminology and stuff?
The sprint.
Okay, so I can break that down.
I know it's happening,
Yeah.
It happens every year, but maybe we're not as familiar with everybody.
Definitely. Thank you for asking that. Yeah. And if there's anything else that doesn't make sense, feel free to shout or throw up your hand, because I want you all to be able to follow me here. So that's great. Thank you very much. So a sprint, at least the way we define it in the Drupal community, is basically a focused kind of amount of time. It's usually a day or maybe a weekend, sometimes a little bit longer, depending. And you just get everyone together in a room with coffee and Wi-Fi and usually some snacks and all that kind of good stuff.
And Mountain Dew.
Sure, Mountain Dew. There's also people like that push for healthier options, which I appreciate too. Yes. And so you basically get everyone together in a room, and some people will kind of come with their own things that they want to work on, whether that's Drupal core, whether that's a module, or some other little project. Sometimes they've had sprints for causes and things like that. I think it was at DrupalCon Portland. There was some sort of a natural disaster, and they had a whole sprint around that to build a website for people to get help and get rides and all that stuff. So that's another example of a sprint that made a really big difference. And not all sprints are like this, but at least at this sprint, there's mentors. So if you're brand new to sprinting, there'll be people there that can help you and help find a task for you. And that's actually very similar to what I was doing online in the chat. Is you would show up and you kind of usually talk to them and kind of tell them about your skill sets, your interests, and then your mentor will try and match up a task for you, whether that's updating documentation, maybe doing some manual testing, potentially working on some code. There's a whole range of different things that you can do to contribute. And what's happening here is a triage sprint, so there's a lot of great tasks that you can do, including like manual testing, just reviewing an issue, trying to reproduce bugs, all that kind of good stuff. So that's kind of what a sprint is. Does that make sense? Awesome. So moving on, practice. It's kind of obvious, but I have to mention it. As with so many things, practice is so key. Just repeating, going through the steps, getting comfortable. One of the things that I learned in my time as a mentor is that people have the skills to, let's say, contribute to Drupal core. It's the process of doing that and kind of the potential intimidation that can be there that is the biggest barrier for a good amount of people, if not most people, in my experience. So this kind of ties into the starting small, practicing. I know this is obvious, but sometimes you just have to say the obvious things. And then we kind of, as we go forward, we kind of get into a little thing called Drupal Twig. So in early 2013, I was doing the mentoring, I was working on my own issues on the side, and I wanted to kind of sink my teeth into something other than just the little random core issues that I was finding that I felt comfortable with. And I felt like I was comfortable with that process that I was just talking about of, going through the issue queues, getting your patches reviewed, eventually seeing them get in, hopefully, get them committed. And there were some formal Drupal 8 initiatives like multilingual and views in core and some of these that you may have heard of. Twig was not one of them and never actually became an official initiative, but it was the kind of the strongest kind of grassroots initiative. And based on my early experiences with Drupal 7, but with the theming experience, this particular initiative is one that I was passionate about, and I wanted to improve that for new people coming in. So at the time, Drupal Twig was just kind of something I was keeping an eye on, seeing how it was doing, and I kind of had a little bit of interest in that, more than like some of the other initiatives that were going on. So find or make a fit with whatever you're doing. This is maybe more for something community-based rather than like a solo project or a hobby that you're just kind of doing on your own. But in terms of Drupal community, there's so much going on. It's a pretty broad community in terms of all the different things that are going on, and you don't have to contribute code. I think people, for example, people who organize events are so needed, and it's awesome. So thank you. That's just kind of a random example, but thank you, event organizers, like people who organize DrupalCamp Florida. So in terms of Drupal, at least at the time when Drupal 8 was still in development, you could have maybe started your own initiative if you had something that you were really passionate about, or join one of the kind of really existing stronger ones, or in my case, join one of the underdogs. And when I was kind of trying to find my fit in the community, there's some things that kind of tipped me off to maybe I have found my fit. So this is a part of a comment from Angie Byron, who you probably know better as webchick. So this is a comment on kind of the main Twig issue of the kind of main like get Twig into core issue. Convert all the things to Twig was basically the issue. And I saw this comment, and this just kind of really hit me as in terms of like, no, like not to say that no one else is going to do it, but that they need help. Because she said there needs to be some pickup here real soon, or we might need to have some very hard discussions come mid-February. Sad face. So it was like, okay, I want Twig and core. What can I do to help? So a few days later, Carl Wiedemann, also known as C4RL, that's his handle, created dozens of issues, which was convert all the things to Twig. So convert node template to Twig, convert page template to Twig, all these block template, and all the different modules and theme functions, everything. And I don't know why, it's like something clicked, no pun intended, but I immediately clicked follow on all these issues, and kind of just went from there, I guess, kind of just dove right in. So that's the next one, is dive in. So fairly soon I found that there were some blockers to actually doing these individual conversions. It wasn't so simple as that. There was sort of some things blocking our way, so I started to work on those. And I kind of got stuck pretty quickly, but I got in touch with the Twig team through IRC, and they were very kind. I wasn't really sure what kind of reception I was going to get as someone random just going in and being like, hey, can I help? But they were very kind, and which was great. And I didn't really know what to expect, because what I had done through the community to date was all pretty much through like the Drupal core mentoring, which are a very friendly bunch, very welcoming. So I wasn't sure if once you get into kind of the real stuff, if they're going to be like, oh, you're not good enough. But no, they were totally cool, and they just wanted to help me, and yeah, it was awesome. So find your mission, but more importantly, find what you're passionate about. I felt really great about this work that I was doing. And once we got the blockers out of the way, then we just kind of kept on going, get all the things converted. Pretty soon, though, I was putting in enough hours to call Drupal Twig my second full-time job. It was every spare moment, basically evenings, weekends, lunch hours. I was working on this thing because I was passionate about it. I wanted to see it happen for Drupal 8. So it didn't take too long for those amount of hours on top of a full-time day job to feel unsustainable. I think for obvious reasons. I really wasn't keeping up with my normal routines. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't exercising, which I had been doing before. Not getting enough sleep. Probably not drinking enough water. The list goes on. It was just just like, microwave burritos and just like whatever is quick, and then I can get back to Drupal Twig. That's what I was doing. It was a very kind of focused time for me. So try not to do that with whatever you're doing. Try not to get so deep into it, or if you find that you are, maybe try and keep an eye on that, because although I felt like I was doing the best work of my life, I was definitely overworking myself and maybe setting myself up for burnout just in terms of sheer exhaustion, frankly. There's different definitions for burnout, but I think that qualifies. And I also think that this type of pattern of basically working those two jobs almost, even though one of them's volunteer, kind of also shows like my privilege as just like, hey, I'm like white dude, don't have any kids, so I can just do this, and arguably that's kind of a flaw with most open source communities, is that they rely so much on volunteer efforts that people with kids at home or different situations where they can't necessarily put in all these hours outside of normal working hours unless their employer is sponsoring them, which it's good to see is happening in the Drupal community. To me, it kind of tips the scales in a direction of which the industry is which is white males. So I'm not going to go on a whole rant about that, but to me that's sort of all tied into all of this. And basically the people that can spend the most time slogging away in the Drupal issue queues, they're going to have the most impact on the project, usually for better or for worse. So I think as a community we need to find ways to bring different voices in, because I think it's more than proven now that a more diverse group of people is just better. The results are better. You get different opinions, different viewpoints, different angles. And we are relatively diverse, but we've got ways to go. Before I move on, I'm just going to do a quick shout out to there's a newer group that's started up, I believe, last year, called Drupal Diversity and Inclusion. We're going to have a booth at DrupalCon Baltimore and everything. So it's a working group that's all about encouraging and fostering diversity and inclusion in terms of events, in terms of how people get into core and everything like that. So we're doing, one of the projects that we're doing now is actually a little bit of a handbook for event organizers for things that they can do to make their events more inclusive and things like that. So anyway, it's all, I like all that community stuff, and I think that we need more of those different voices. So one of the things that I had to do when I was kind of working these two jobs basically is cutting out things like Twitter, television, basically, anything where I had to be like, okay, am I going to work on this thing that I really enjoy, or am I going to sit in front of the TV? Some decisions are very easy, and I think not going on Twitter was perfectly healthy for me. I think that's fine. I mean, maybe the other ways that I wasn't taking care of myself by not sleeping and stuff, not as good, but Twitter, I think I survived well without Twitter. So, maybe if you really want to do something else, you're never going to get more hours in the day, but you can decide what to do with those hours. So I more or less quit Twitter. I haven't really fully re-engaged back with Twitter, to be honest, and that's okay. I think that's okay. But yeah, keep track of your health, keep track of your social life. Don't forget to do those things. That's very important. You gotta keep some balance, take care of yourself. So cut distractions, but remember to have some fun. Take pictures of your cat or whatever it is that you have fun with. This is my cat Wyatt playing with, or rather sleeping on, the index cards that I was using to put together this talk. So I was kind of trying to lay everything out, do all the timelines and everything. Oh, that looks comfy. Anyway, you got to have at least one cat picture. I've heard. So, March 2013, I organized the first Drupal core sprint in London, in my city, for Drupal Sprint Weekend, which we just had actually maybe a few weeks ago. So sprints were held all over the world, and this has happened every year since, and we've participated in London. We've participated in every Drupal Sprint Weekend since 2013, and we've also held some other local sprints outside of Drupal Sprint Weekend, but we always at the minimum, we always do Drupal Sprint Weekend because I think it's really amazing and really ties into how Drupal is a worldwide community. So you have people all over the world working on Drupal at the same time. I think it's just an awesome feeling. So if you can, get involved locally. So doing these local sprints and meetups, even though I was connecting online with the Drupal community, connecting with people face to face, you can also go to events and things like that, like we are right now, which is great. But it's to me, it's always healthy to stay connected to the real world, even if what you're doing is not tangible, like it is with the web. And I have to say this too: if there's nothing happening in your local community, maybe try and start something. Maybe you can find some like-minded people and you can kind of get together and organize a meetup or run a sprint or whatever, because otherwise maybe no one will. So maybe that's something that you can do, and that would be super valuable. So around this time, a few people who were active in Twig were added as component maintainers of the theme system. And I remember when I found out about this, because someone had basically created an issue and proposed, like, add these people to maintainers.txt, which is the file that lists, like, here are all the people kind of responsible for these areas and maintaining them. And I was, like, sitting at home on my couch on my laptop working on Twig, and I kind of see something pop up, and I say, oh, okay, great, all right, keep working on Twig, keep working on Twig. So it's like, it was kind of a pat on the back, which was good, but it didn't help me at all in balancing my life or anything like that. So anyway, not that it needs to, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can also interpret this as make mistakes intentionally. That's fine too. I don't know if that technically counts as a mistake, but your mileage may vary. One of the mistakes we made as the Twig team was we tried to convert everything at once. So insert, a convert all the things meme here. I don't really put memes in my slides, but if you know the one where it's like all the things, that's what we were trying to do. We were definitely in danger of missing our deadline, which was DrupalCon Portland, which was in May 2013. In Drupal core at the time, there were over 60 templates and over 150 theme functions at the time. And finally someone had the brilliant idea of only converting the templates rather than templates and theme functions, because you could ship a Drupal 8 that had Twig templates and PHP theme functions. It wouldn't be as good, but you could do it. But what you can't ship is, you've got some PHP templates and you've got some Twig templates. That would just be a nightmare. So doing only the templates, don't get me wrong, I know it's 60, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a massive task, but it was still more doable. So in Portland, we did a lot of things. It was quite a whirlwind for me, at least. One of the most notable things to me about Portland is that we trained a small army of front-end developers on how to do like back-end PHP for performance testing using XHProf, and it was fun. So every template that we converted from PHP to Twig needed this performance testing before we could get it into core. That's all I'll say about that, but this is where I want to take a second and give respect to any front-end developers, anyone who touches the front end. Front-end developers don't have an easy job, especially in Drupal. The front-end world changes so quickly, and we were still able to get these folks who were basically breaking their back working on Drupal already to help with back-end performance testing, which is kind of very opposite of front-end land. So Twig wouldn't be in core, honestly, if it wasn't for these people stepping up and saying, how can I help? Even if it's outside of their comfort zone, how can I help? So I want to have a little round of applause for the front-end developers in the Drupal community. Yeah. Respect. All right. So at DrupalCon, it was me and Fabian Franz, also known as Fabian X, who is now one of the Drupal 7 core committers. And we were officially the last ones in the Coder Lounge, 24-hour Coder Lounge at, I think it was the Doubletree Hotel in Portland, at 3 a.m. trying to make Drupal Twig a reality, hashtags, whatever. So I worked very hard in Portland, didn't really get a lot of sleep, got a really bad Drupal flu, but we got Twig into Drupal 8, which was amazing. But yeah, basically one of my strongest memories of Portland is I was taking this horrible cold medication that I really reacted badly to, made me all dizzy and stuff, and I wasn't listening to my body, I was just like, Twig, Twig, Twig. So what I remember is going to the sprint on Friday. The mentors usually have a different color T-shirt at the DrupalCons. It was a green T-shirt. They didn't have my size. I'm a pretty small. I'm like a twig myself. So they had like a large or an extra large. So I literally wore it as a cape, and I was running around, and I was popping this cold medication that I thought was helping me, and it was making me feel like crap, but I wasn't really paying attention. So try and pay attention to your body regardless of what's going on, and you'll be happier. Because if I just would have stopped, I would have had a much better day. It was a rough day, but we got Twig in. So it was funny because people were like, how are you doing? I'm like, awful. And they're, but you're smiling. It's like, yeah, Twig's getting into the car. So whatever you're doing, put your own twist on it. Express your angle is what I'm calling it. For me, one of the things is like how I review patches. I've been known to be quite a nitpicker. I've been called like eagle eyes and all this stuff because I'll spot the littlest details for better or for worse. I guess someone's got to do it, so I'm a pretty friendly person, so I guess that helps. Another thing that I like to do is automate things using computers. Get the computer to work with me to do things like bulk create issues or whatever, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how I do things, but whatever you're doing, find your own twist on it, put your personality into it. For sure, you don't have to do everything how everyone else does it. So we kept on working on theme function conversions. We managed to get all 150 plus converted for Drupal 8's release. The last one bit the dust at BadCamp in 2015, which was awesome, and I got to see that happen in person, which was amazing. And we also worked on some other things besides Twig, like making theme suggestions a bit easier to work with. I'm not going to get into those, but I'm actually going to be giving a presentation in the afternoon where I'll talk a little bit about theme suggestions. Let me actually just quickly get you the time and the room for that before I forget. So that is and no obligation to come, but if you're interested in finding out more about, it's kind of
in this room at 1 o'clock.
Awesome. It is in this room. Great. So I'll just hang out here. Huh? So it is in, room 175, 1 p.m. All right. So deadlines can be motivating. Even after Portland, we ran into other deadlines. We got betas and release candidates and alphas, and well, alpha comes before beta, but you get the idea. And the one thing I will say about deadlines is that if the deadline is moving, if it keeps changing, or even kind of from your perception changing, it can be demotivating in my experience. So what this might be for you is kind of setting goals for yourself. So try and, if you're going to do it that way, try and either do it or like stick to it. Even if you don't think you're going to make it, just keep it. Don't like move it forward or something, because then you're just going to be kicking it forward, kicking the can or whatever down the road forever. So yeah, just keep an eye out for that. In our case, it was external deadlines, which was kind of even more frustrating. But anyway, we got through it. Don't forget to take some breaks. You don't have to do, especially once you got into the habit of working on, like, let's say, whatever hobby or Drupal or whatever. Don't be afraid to take a day off, week off, whatever. Especially when you get overwhelmed, it's good to take a break, breathe. Over the years, I've definitely taken breaks, whether it's vacation or just I need a little bit of time to do my own thing. So now we kind of get to the stage where I eventually became a core committer. So I started out as a provisional core committer early last year, and focusing on theming and front end, which is kind of natural because I was working on Twig. I'm now a full core committer. Have been for, I guess, at least a few months now, maybe 6 months or something like that. It's been a really great experience. I've been able to keep reviewing code and doing things like that, like I was doing in Twig. And one of the highlights so far was I did a live commit in New Orleans, and it was so very long, very thorough, but very well received. People said that they learned a lot through the way that I looked at it and the way that I considered everything. So that was a lot of fun to do. But I still struggle with balance. I think we all do, with keeping track of everything that's going on. So for me, it's core committer duties. I have some other duties in core, and life, work, all these things. So especially when you're starting to do something new, try and stay focused on it at least for a while, so that you can kind of get it established. And Staying focused also has to do with saying no to things. So I stepped down from core mentoring after a certain point when I was getting really into Drupal Twig. Late last, well, actually a couple years ago, or no, sorry, this was last year. So late last year around DrupalCamp, I used to be a theme system maintainer, as I mentioned earlier, so I stepped down from that so I could focus on being a core committer, basically getting whatever is the next twig or just general improvements into core. So keep at it, be aware of distractions, keep moving, don't be afraid to step down from existing things that you're doing to make way for new things that you might be more passionate about. It's totally okay. Especially in the Drupal community, people will usually say something like, thank you for all your work, and like, you know, all the best. Like it's a weird thing where you can kind of get into this guilt thing with, you have to kind of keep doing whatever it is you're doing, but you really don't. Take care of yourself. So, and also do things that, one of the things that I did was try and focus on things that I thought could benefit from my skills, my personality, and all my different traits. So keep moving. Keep doing what you're doing. Also remember to be a human. Breathe, drink water, all that good stuff. Eat your veggies, whatever. And thank you for your time. So I did go a little bit over, so I think if anyone wants to chat, we can probably bring it to the Genius Bar if that's cool with everyone. All right.
That was good.
Thanks everyone for coming.